She was home at 9:30. She was always home at that time on Thursdays, sometimes a little earlier. You couldn't be too careful. It was always exactly 10:15 when he came home from his lodge meeting, like clockwork. Her father had gotten him into it, and he'd agreed just to please them both. But after he joined, he found he genuinely enjoyed the civil service aspect of it. He was excellent at organizing fundraisers and social events, so much so that he was nominated and elected to the Board of Governors. He eventually became the governor's chair of the scholarship committee. He worked long and hard to support and raise money for the project. Thanks to his efforts, they were able to fund 2 community college scholarships per year for deserving young people. She always made sure she was clean and presentable when he got home. Sometimes she was already in bed, but often she waited up. They'd sit and talk about the day, how the scholarship fund was going, and the usual things married couples chatted about before bed. Sometimes they made love, but most nights, they just snuggled until they fell asleep. The first sign that something might be wrong came when she pulled into the driveway and couldn't get into the garage. His car was parked at an odd angle, blocking both doors. She got out of her car, feeling uneasy. He had talked to her just a few minutes ago, and she told him she was on her way home. She loved this house. Though she'd been a firm believer in apartment living, she'd let him convince her to move here when her lease expired. It was a relatively new 3-bedroom house on a small lot. The wraparound porch gave it a dignified look. There was a swing on the porch beneath the ceiling fans. They often sat there, swinging gently and enjoying warm summer nights. This was the family home he dreamed of, and she was perceptive enough to see what he was hoping for. She could picture swings and a kiddie pool in the backyard, which was fenced in. One of the happiest moments of her life had happened just last month. They'd been working on a new flower bed. She threw some soil at him to get his attention. "Hey, what? Did I miss a spot?" he asked, laughing. "No," she said. "I just needed to tell you something. I'm ready." "Not yet. We haven't put in the fertilizer or lime. We have to mix it before we plant." She smiled. "That's not what I meant. I'm ready to have a baby." Good thing the flower bed was soft, she thought, as he threw himself on top of her, pinning her to the ground. The love-making that followed was slow and gentle, more like an exchange of souls and bodies. She'd never felt so loved. She was surprised to see tears in his eyes. He had always been so calm and reserved. Now, stepping onto the porch, she tried to be as quiet as possible. She jumped when she saw him sitting on the swing. The porch light wasn't on, so she hadn't noticed him. "Jesus, Kenny, you scared me. Come on, let's go inside." "No," he said. "Stay with me for a while. Let's enjoy the breeze." He patted the spot next to him on the swing. "Where have you been?" he asked. "You said you were here, but you weren't when I got home." She fidgeted. He got off the swing awkwardly. "I didn't feel like sleeping," he said. "I remembered I was almost out of gas and didn't want to deal with it in the morning. So I drove to the corner market." "There was only a quarter tank in the car," she replied nervously, hoping he wouldn't check. He took her hand and looked her in the eye. "I could have sworn you just got back from the Highway Motel on 5th Avenue. Room 69. "That's right," she said, her voice trembling. "Jerry's a little superstitious about these things. Is this where you usually meet every Thursday from 6 to 9 p.m.? She tried to pull her hand away, but he held it firmly, his grip unyielding. "Relax, Les," he said. "I'm not going to hurt you," he said softly, "but I want you to promise to listen to me without interrupting. I promise it'll be your turn to speak, and I'll listen when we're done. Will you do that for me?" She hunched over, curling into a small ball as if to shield herself from the weight of his words. She sniffed loudly, her shoulders trembling. He continued, his voice quiet and colorless, devoid of emotion. "When I first heard about it, I refused to believe it. One of your friends saw you." "No, I don't know which one. She sent me an email from a public account, but I ignored it. At first, it was just a tiny seed planted in my mind. But it grew, spreading through the cracks in my brain until I had no choice but to confront it. I had to find the truth, to disprove it. He paused for a moment, his jaw tightening. So, I checked it out. I had a friend who was house-sitting, and I asked him to keep an eye out for me. It wasn't easy asking for that kind of favor, especially from a friend. It's safe to say this probably ended our friendship. It was hard for him to tell me everything, and even harder for me to listen. He had pictures, Les. Pictures of you and him, going in and out of that motel room. Hello kisses. Goodbye kisses. I'm just grateful he didn't find out who the man was. My friend avoids me now. I think it's because every time he looks at me, he sees the pain he saw on my face that day. She began to cry, soft, quiet sobs breaking the silence. She tried to speak, but he placed his fingers gently against her lips. Hush, he said. You promised to listen first. He pressed his fingers lightly against hers, waiting until she gave a small nod. Good. I'll try not to take too long. The porch light was off, and the only light came from the faint glow spilling through the living room curtains. His voice was calm and measured, but his face was a mask of anguish. I couldn't see him when my friend showed me the pictures, he continued, his tone steady. But I swear, the sound of my heart breaking nearly deafened me. It rang in my ears. Even then I thought, no, I hoped, there was a reason, a justification. I needed to know why. Why would you two do this to us? He drew a shaky breath, his composure faltering. You betrayed her too, Les. Your sister. When your mom died, she stepped in and raised you. She gave up her teenage years, her freedom. At 15, the last thing she wanted was to take care of a 9-year-old, but she did it anyway. Your father told me there was one year when money was so tight. She gave up her Christmas just so you'd have something under the tree. She loved you more like a daughter than a sister. She'll find out eventually. She deserves to know the truth, but I won't tell her. I love her too much to hurt her like that. Maybe she'll forgive Jerry. She's the most incredible woman I've ever known. But even she might not be able to forgive this. She cried harder now, the weight of his words sinking in. She remembered the excitement she'd felt sneaking around, the smugness of thinking she could get away with it. It all seemed so childish, so meaningless now. I thought you loved me, he said, his voice breaking for the first time. I thought I'd forgive you for anything because of it. But now I don't know. I doubted you, Les, and I hated myself for it. And then I slipped something into your purse. That nifty little flashlight I gave you. It was also a voice-activated recorder. I know. It's awful. But I needed the truth. There didn't seem to be any spark between you two. It was mechanical, like a transaction. One time, he even called it knocking back a quick piece, and you giggled and agreed. If it meant so little, why did you do it? It gave me hope, though. Hope that it would end, that maybe you'd stop. I thought if I made it difficult for you to meet, you'd give up. I even took the recorder out of your purse at one point, but then I did something stupid. I listened to it. He stopped, looking away as though the memory itself was unbearable. I cried when I heard you say you were ready to have our baby. I thought it meant the affair was over, that you were ready to focus on us. But then I heard the rest. I heard you tell him it was the last time. He met her tear-streaked face, his eyes full of hurt. When did he say forever? I swear I heard angels, Kenny said softly, his voice steady yet haunted. But they were demons, baring their teeth in joy. He pressed play on a recorder, its tiny speaker filling the air with a voice that tore through her heart, her own. Of course, you don't need to wait long to get pregnant. I love him, and I want to make sure it's his. 2 weeks after the doctor confirms I'm pregnant, you'll be with me again. We may have to see each other more often. All my friends say being pregnant makes you want it all the time. Just be glad Kenny will be around to take the slack. In the darkness, Kenny watched her. Her face had gone pale, her breathing rapid and shallow as she teetered on the edge of hyperventilation. He waited patiently for her to regain control, leaning back against the porch swing, silent and composed. "You have no idea what went through my mind, Les," he said finally, his tone quiet but carrying a razor's edge. "Ugly things. Dark things. So vile, I'm ashamed they even crossed my mind. I wanted to destroy you, to make Jerry suffer a slow, agonizing death." He closed his eyes for a moment, drawing a deep breath. But I calmed down. I thought it through. For 2 weeks, I thought about what I would do, and then I came up with the perfect plan. Revenge. Leslie flinched, terror flashing in her eyes. "Relax, darling," he said, his voice dripping with mock tenderness. "It's nothing like you're imagining. My revenge is simple. You'll never be able to love me again. From now on, it's not Kenny and Les. It's just Kenny and Leslie. We're not a couple anymore. We're nothing." He paused, his expression unreadable as he looked out into the night. "There won't be any children. No 2 little girls like you, because I thought the world needed more of your kindness and grace. No little boy with your laughter and my sighs. We won't go to Lamaze classes together. I'll never rub lotion on your tummy to ease stretch marks. I won't hold your hand in the delivery room, cutting the umbilical cord while we cry tears of joy. There won't be any first days of kindergarten, no high school graduations, no first heartbreaks to comfort, no driving lessons, no celebrations of their victories or consolations for their losses. And there will be no golden anniversary, Leslie. No trembling hands cutting into a cake together after 50 years of love and memories. None of it. You killed us," he said, his voice breaking as tears finally welled in his eyes. "You killed everything we could have been, just as surely as if you had pulled a trigger." He wiped at his face roughly, as though ashamed of the emotion. "I'm tired, Les. Tired of thinking. Tired of crying. Tired of feeling lost and alone. Somewhere out there must be a good woman looking for a man like me. Someone who deserves my love and trust. Someone I can give my whole heart to without fear of betrayal. It won't be next week or next month, but someday I'll start looking for her." Kenny stood abruptly, brushing off his hands as if to physically shake free of the conversation. "I'm leaving now. I've already taken what I wanted. Very little, by the way. I didn't take a single picture of you or us together. I don't need them. I have enough memories burned into my mind to last a lifetime." He stepped toward the porch stairs, then stopped. "One last thing. Tell your family. This mess is yours. Clean it up however you want. Just don't make me the villain. Say it didn't work out, and I'll back you up." He turned to leave, his keys jingling faintly in his pocket, then hesitated again. "Oh, and tell Jerry to stay away from me. If I'm in a bar or restaurant or any public place and he sees me, he needs to leave. Immediately. I'd never hurt you, Les, not physically. But Jerry, he doesn't deserve that guarantee. And frankly, I don't know if I can control my anger around him." Kenny reached his car and opened the door. The shock of it all finally passed, and Leslie bolted to her feet, running to him and grabbing his arm. "Wait! Please wait!" she cried, her voice frantic. "You told me I could talk when you were done. Please, Kenny, let me explain. Beg, if you want. I'll never touch anyone else again. I swear." He gently pried her fingers off his arm, stepping back. "Never," he said, his tone cold and final. "Never touch me again. I just did something I swore I'd never do to you, Les. I lied. I don't want to hear you talk. I don't want your explanations, your excuses, or your promises. We're done. You have no idea how sorry I am." Without another word, Kenny climbed into his car and drove away. Leslie sank onto the porch steps, sobbing uncontrollably as the taillights disappeared into the night. And that was the end